What's up, guys? Welcome back to your channel, TFD. And yes, we are here once again with some breaking news. So it's official. Stephanie White just dropped a bombshell. Caitlin Clark is not suiting up tomorrow, folks. That's right. For this one, we're heading straight to Indy. Let's get into it. Everyone's been hyped for this matchup, but it just hit a major snag. Stephanie White? Yeah, she's been kind of off the radar lately, but now she's back and making headlines. She made it crystal clear. Caitlin Clark will not be playing tomorrow against the Atlanta Dream. Clark is still dealing with that injury, and she's not cleared yet. Just earlier, I put out a video letting you all know Kayla Carey was back at practice, but honestly, that might be the only basketball action we see from Caitlin Clark until the next game. Stephanie White faced the media and confirmed it herself. Clark is out. You already know how it goes here. I'm done talking. Let's roll the footage and break it all down.
I guess I can start first off, just like, how are you doing? How's your family doing after that being away for a couple days?
Thanks. I'm doing all right. It's helpful that we have such a great group that pouring into me and helping give me strength. I've said it all along. We've got 3 head coaches on our staff, and so knowing that they continue to step up and do great things, it gives me comfort. Our family's working through a hard time right now, and no matter what, I'm going to be where my feet are, but I'm really thankful for this group.
I know you talked to Austin a lot when he came in. Just what did you think of him, being acting head coach and his performance on Saturday?
I thought he was great. It's not a surprise. When you look at Austin and you look at Bree, both of them are ready to be head coaches in this league, and we're very fortunate that we have them on our staff. And I thought his poise, his communication, it's always been very, very clear. We're all aligned on on the way we see the game, on points of emphasis, and I was really proud. I was really proud of him. I was really proud of them. And they continue to pour into each other and help one another.
Yeah, Aaliyah said post-game that it seemed like you and Austin kind of morphed into one coach, one person. Just how does that help with continuity, like when you have to be gone?
It helps a lot. And I give all that credit to Lynn Dunn, because when I was here as an assistant coach, Lynn Dunn poured into me to prepare me to be ready when it was my turn. And it was like we were one coach, and she taught me how to be a coach that empowers and prepares other coaches to be head coaches. And so, I owe that to her. And I feel like part of our job as coaches in this league is to prepare the next generation of head coaches. And, you can't do that unless you give them the freedom to do what they do best and empower them to do what they do best. And, Austin's ready, Bree's ready, they both are. And they've grown, they've learned, they've taken advantage of their opportunities, and it's not a hesitation at all. That if I can't be here, they're ready.
How about Caitlin? Is she going to be ready for it?
Oh, not for tomorrow. No. I think for us, it's we've got to work, both her and Sophie, back into, are they in basketball condition? What does it mean to go live? It's one thing to do some shooting drills. It's another thing to get out there on the floor, get back into to movement patterns, rhythm, timing. And so that's what part of, picking and choosing the things that they can be in practice so that we can see their progression. And, both of them being out for long periods of time, you got to work your way back into being game ready.
I know Caitlin was supposed to be reevaluated this weekend. Was she cleared to return to basketball activities?
I don't know if cleared is the right word.
Yeah.
I mean, we're ready to start ramping back up and make sure, it's completely different when you're just doing one-on-one workouts and when you're out there in 5-on-5, getting up and down the floor, moving laterally. So she's been allowed to do some practicing, not everything. And we're gonna be smart, and we're gonna be cautious, and we're gonna play the long game and work her back in very intentionally.
And Sophie too, she was limited on Friday, and what has she been able to progress and do?
Yeah, she was a little limited today. Again, it's seeing how they do in certain drills and certain actions. Getting them back into game condition. Again, this is an injury that she's aggravated a few times now this season, so making sure we're playing the long game and doing it the right way.
For this team, you guys getting a couple of wins last.
All right, y'all, let's talk about it. Aari McDonald and the Indiana Fever. Can they actually keep her? I know I'm not the first one to talk about this, but I went deep on this situation. Like, full deep dive. And listen, I'll say what most Fever fans are thinking. We want Aari McDonald on this team. Period. We want her at all costs. Because let's be real. Before Aari showed up, the Indiana Fever looked rough. I mean, one of the worst teams in the league. Now, I'll give them some grace. They were thrown into the fire with a new core, young players, and zero chemistry. But the minute Aari McDonald stepped on the floor, everything changed. She brought exactly what the team was missing: pace, leadership, playmaking, and confidence. She fits the system, she fits the culture, and she elevates everyone around her. She's been that spark plug. And here's the kicker. Even when Caitlin Clark returns from her quad strain, Aari is still an asset. Why? Because they've been toying with the idea of Caitlin playing off-ball a bit, like she did at Iowa. This isn't new, just new for the Fever. The problem is, when they tried it with Coulson running the point, it just didn't work. Like at all. You could tell. It was time to pull the plug. But with Aari, she's the real deal. She can run the offense, get buckets in the paint, knock down threes, and drive past defenders like it's nothing. And even if Caitlin is on the floor, Aari can still slide in, give Kelsey or Caitlin a breather, and keep the energy high. She's the missing puzzle piece. Now, here's where it gets frustrating. She's on an emergency hardship contract. That's only allowed because the Fever were down to less than 10 healthy players. But once either Sophie Cunningham or Caitlin Clark is cleared to return, they'll hit that 10-player threshold, and Aari has to be waived. That's how the CBA works. No ifs, ands, or buts. If they want her back, they have to wait 10 days before they can re-sign her. And that's not me speculating. That's from Tony East, who covers the Indiana Pacers and Fever. He broke this all down, and even compared it to what happened with Crystal Dangerfield in the past. I'm actually going to play a clip from his podcast in a second. But man, this is tough. Because Aari McDonald deserves to stay. And Indiana needs her if they're serious about making a playoff push this season.
Been limited. Last thing I want to get to, Aari McDonald added on a hardship this week, has played quite well, right? I think her pace add has been good. She can put more pressure on her defense than Sydney Coulson, who's more of a table setter defensive type. They're just different. I don't know that one's necessarily better than the other. The way the Fever play makes McDonald look quite good. Her ball pressure and defense has been really good. They're 2-0 since they added her on a hardship. Some confusion over the way this goes. I covered a hardship before in Crystal Dangerfield a few years ago, and I think 2022. The Fever had some players overseas. This was pre-prioritization rules. Danielle Robinson was not yet with the team, and I can't remember who the other player was, but they only could have Crystal Dangerfield until those players returned. Then Dangerfield left, and they had to wait to get her back until that was cleared. I've seen a lot of fans say that the Fever could just cut someone else and then just keep Aari. That's not true. Once Clark or Cunningham returns, which could happen as soon as Tuesday's game, we'll see. When we were at Pacers practice earlier this week, Clark was running in the background in the exercise equipment there. So that's the first time I'd seen her running, for example. And she's obviously, you've all seen a million videos of her shooting. She's talked now that you can find that interview on this channel. We'll see when she returns. I'm over-explaining this. Once her Cunningham return, whether that's Tuesday or their next game after that, which I believe is their Liberty game over the weekend, so that's another 4 days. Keep that in mind when you think about returns. Then they have to let McDonald go. I think it's 10 days post-hardship, and then after that, once she's available, and remember, people keep saying someone else will inevitably scoop her up. Well, anyone could have done that before the season, right? So it's not like teams are all like, oh my gosh, you know, we could have had her. Like, yeah, she's played well, but I don't know if anyone's opinion has changed so much. I don't think it's like inevitable that someone would pick her up. Then they could, in theory, waive somebody to bring her in if they wanted to. She is chewing into their cap space right now, so later in the season, re-signing players will be just a different matter because of this, but they need her, and they got 2 wins, right? That is the most valuable thing you could possibly spend your money on. So that's a problem to deal with later, but I've seen some confusion. She has to be the one who goes when one of those other two.
All right, so let's talk about what's really going down with Aari McDonald and the Indiana Fever, because things are getting complicated fast. Now, based on what I've heard, it looks like the Fever can't waive Brianna Turner. Yep, the name everyone's throwing around. Until after they waive Aari McDonald and then re-sign her. That's the only way they can make the roster moves work under the current CBA rules. And here's where the timeline gets tricky. Sophie Cunningham probably won't be back for the June 10th game against Atlanta, and honestly, I'd be surprised if Caitlin Clark plays either. But even if they both don't play, it's likely Sophie returns by June 14th, and that's when the Fever hit the 10-player minimum again, meaning they'll be forced to waive Aari McDonald. So what does that mean? Aari would miss at least 4 games. June 17th versus the Sun, June 19th versus Valkyrie, June 22nd versus Aces, possibly June 24th versus the Storm, depending on whether the 10-day rule is literal or if she has to wait until the 25th. Now here's what's frustrating. Aari has been a game changer. She's a weapon on both ends of the floor and fits this system like a glove. But unless they make a move, like waiving Brianna Turner, they risk losing her momentum and possibly letting another team scoop her up. Now the big question is, why not just waive Turner? Well, according to the way the league and CBA operate, the Fever can't do that immediately. And they might also be worried about optics, like, how does it look to free agents if a team signs you in the off-season and then cuts you barely a month in? We've got the 2026 free agency bonanza coming, right? Every player not on a rookie scale deal will be a free agent, outside of names like Lexi Brown and Kalani Brown. So the Fever might be trying to protect their reputation as a stable, appealing destination. Because think about it, what kind of message would it send to potential role players? That if they don't immediately fit, they could be out? It might make people hesitate, even with the bright lights and massive exposure that comes with playing alongside Caitlin Clark. And listen, I've done my homework. I looked through 2023 and part of 2024, and I didn't find any examples of a player being signed in the off-season as a free agent and then being waived just a month into the season. Usually, players waived early are either on training camp contracts or in-season trades, not full free agent signings like Turner. So even if waiving Turner feels obvious to us fans, it's a tricky spot for the front office. Do they waive her before the stretch of games where Aari can't play? Do they ask her to suit up for those games, knowing she's on her way out? Or do they just ride it out and risk losing Aari's impact for nearly 2 weeks? And on top of that, Damaira Stantas is heading out soon too, so the rotation is going to be even more fragile. Now look, I'm not in the Fever's locker room. I don't know what's being said behind closed doors. But here's what I do know. This team is hot. They've got the spotlight. And Aari McDonald belongs on this roster. Losing her, even temporarily, could stall the Fever's momentum at the worst time. Alright y'all, let's break down something super important that's flying under the radar. And that's how Aari McDonald's contract situation is affecting the Indiana Fever's cap space and their plans for the rest of the season. Now here's the deal. Aari is currently on a hardship contract, and she's earning $475 a day. And while that may not sound like much in the grand scheme of pro sports, it does eat into the $43,000 the Fever have available to bring in a 12th player later this season. So the longer Aari stays, the less money they'll have available to make that mid-season move. And here's the thing, I'm of the belief that the Fever already have someone in mind for that 12th roster spot. I mean, come on. They intentionally started the season with 11 players and held on to that $43,000. That tells me they had a long-term plan in place, likely aiming for mid-July to bring in a player on a prorated veteran minimum or base contract. But every day Aari is on the roster, that window gets pushed back. Meanwhile, teams like the Chicago Sky, they're not dealing with this. They have their space freed up and can move earlier if they want to scoop someone up. That's a competitive disadvantage for the Fever, and it's something the front office is definitely weighing. Now don't get it twisted. If you've watched any of my videos, you already know I'm sign Aari at all costs. I'm 100% Team Aari. I believe she fits the system, she changes games, and she elevates everyone around her. But I also have to be real with you. This is what's going on behind the scenes. And there's some confusion out there about the 10-day rule. People keep asking, why can't they just waive her and bring her right back? But this isn't just a quick shuffle. According to Tony East, who covered the Crystal Dangerfield situation with the Fever before, once the team waives a hardship player like Aari, they're required to wait 10 days before re-signing her, even if there's a gap or injury again. That's in the CBA. It's not negotiable. So yeah, it's messy. It's a cap issue, a timing issue, and a roster optics issue. But as a fan, I still say make it work. Aari McDonald is worth it. Now let me know what you think. Is the cap space more important? Should the Fever risk waiting on that 12th player to keep Aari? Or do they have to stick to the plan and move on? So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you risk the optics and cut Turner? Or do you play the long game and hope Aari waits it out? Let's talk. Hit that like, hit subscribe, and keep those notifications on, because this story is far from over.